Hey y'all, hi. So here's what's going on. As many of you know, for the past couple of years, my husband and I have been living with some friends of ours in their house in LA. Before that, we lived in a studio apartment in downtown LA. And just a month or so ago, we moved across the country and we rented this house. It's been a really long time since we lived in a house, and it's actually been a long time since we lived together, just the two of us, or just the three of us if you include our cat. And a lot of our stuff was in storage for those 2 years. Basically, what's going on in my life right now is that I am trying to furnish a house after having not had most of my furniture accessible for a couple of years, and after having not lived in a space this big for a long time. So I've been thinking a lot about how I want the space to look and feel, of course. Like, it's really exciting to make these decisions about one's space. But I've also been thinking a lot about what's practical. We're not going to live in this house forever. We don't own it. We don't really know where we're going to go next. We don't really know how long we're going to be here. So it doesn't make sense to buy a whole bunch of brand new furniture just to make this space perfect. But at the same time, I want it to feel good while we're here. And I do want to choose some things, some beautiful things that will work in this space and that will probably also work in a future space. So there's been a lot of thought and a lot of talk about rooms, interior spaces, vibes, layouts. And one of the things that I've been doing is collecting imagery primarily from Instagram, like saving images from some Instagram accounts that I follow to inspire me. And I've amassed quite a collection of images of rooms and spaces, and I'm very, very inspired by them. And they are really helping me ground myself in this weird sort of in-between space of like wanting to furnish but not over-furnish a space, and wanting to be comfortable but not wanting to acquire a whole bunch of stuff that I'm going to regret having acquired at some point. The aesthetic that's coming together at least in the world of my Inspo images, is very different from what we see in social media in general. And some of them are completely unhinged, and I haven't even really started unpacking why it is I'm so attracted to them. So this is a little bit of a disorganized video, as you can probably already tell by the intro. I'm just going to go through the images, put them on the screen, and talk about them with you, and try to get at why it is I like them, what it is they're pointing to, how they can maybe be a guide, how they are already acting as a guide, and maybe by the end of it, have a little bit more clarity about next steps for furnishing this house. If this is your first time to my channel, then welcome. I'm glad you clicked on this video, but it's a little bit of a weird one to start with. This is mostly a beauty channel. I like applying makeup looks. In fact, I just filmed a video in which I played with some colorful makeup and applied this look right here. I like reviewing beauty products. I also like talking about remembering to return to what you already own instead of always buying the next new thing. And in that way, this video is kind of emblematic of what I do on my channel, because I am going to be talking about being comfortable with what's old instead of always needing something new. If you enjoy this, I hope you'll subscribe. And now let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. I am going to move to the side so that the images can be as big as possible. Most of these images are saved from just 4 or 5 Instagram accounts that I follow that post images of spaces. So I'll link all of the Instagram accounts that I follow that are in this vein, that are like giving me access to this kind of imagery. I'll link them all down below. Let's talk about this image. There's a lot going on. That's one of the things that I like, because I feel like there is a kind of minimalism to it in that there isn't any ugly stuff in it. So there isn't any like plastic trash can, for example, no Tupperware, no vacuum cleaner. Everything has a quality of being made out of natural materials, being cozy in that way, and aesthetic in that way. But it's a little bit chaotic, right? There are plants on top of books. There are some like candles bunched together on the coffee table. It's messy kind of in its way. There are some books on the floor. There's a bunch of mixed prints. The room that we're looking at clearly has like at least 3 rugs in it. The area rug rule, where like you have one big area rug in the living room and all of the furniture is perfectly placed on top of it, that rule has totally been broken. There's clearly like an armchair on top of one rug, a coffee table on top of another rug. There's a runner in the background. The art on the wall is very awkwardly hung, right? This is not the picture gallery that we see in the interior design mags. And yet, I really like this image, even though I would be uncomfortable with organizing the pictures hanging on my wall in this exact way. And I'm actually struggling with the sort of separate rugs in a room principle right now. It's something that would kind of make sense because we don't have any huge, beautiful rugs for our living room, but we do have some smaller rugs. And it's just hard for me to shake that feeling because of all of the interior design content that I consume. It's hard for me to shake that feeling that it's not going to look right and it's always going to look awkward unless we spend hundreds of dollars to get a huge rug to go underneath all of our living room furniture. So there are things about this image that are like reminding me that it doesn't have to be perfect. Like chaos is okay, and awkwardness and imbalance in the way that things are placed, it's okay. And I think that part of why I really love it and part of why it works is that there is an absence of like plastic stuff, awkward stuff, ugly stuff. Everything individually has charm. And so the layering, the blankets thrown over the couch, the mixed prints, the mixed rugs, the awkward placing of the pictures on the walls, it all is made cozy and comfortable by the fact that there is this kind of minimalism of materials. I think that one of the things that I'll end up returning to a lot, that I'm already discovering just talking about this image, is the push and pull between minimalism and maximalism in me. I'm definitely not a minimalist. I love texture and I love color and I like mixed prints and mixed colors. So I'm not an aesthetic minimalist in that way. But increasingly I have a desire not to have a bunch of crap all around and not to have things that don't have that kind of charm, you know? And I think that one of the takeaways from this image, if not the takeaway for me, is that you can have a kind of minimalism of materials, like being careful with which kinds of fabrics and textures you bring into your space, but then have like a riotous maximalism of organization and still end up with a space that feels really cozy and calm, which is, I think, what people are often after when they design things in a minimalist way. Okay, let's talk about this. Let us talk about this. So this apparently is an image from the Mount Fuji Architects Studio in Japan. I love this image. And of course, it's not like I'm going to build empty bookshelves into the middle of a room in our rental house. It's just empty bookshelves are okay. A floor with just a small rug placed kind of at an angle is okay. It's this half-empty, inviting space. There's something very special about it, and it is not furnished within an inch of its life. In fact, the opposite of that. It's like 1/10 furnished. When I saw this, I sort of caught a whiff of the possibility of having spaces in the house or even corners or walls in the house that feel as lightly furnished as this and have this kind of elegance. It's a kind of touchstone for me, especially, again, in this world of media about design in which everything is perfectly balanced and furnished within an inch of its life. It's not directly transferable, this image, actionable, but there's something about it. It's kind of like one of the main ones that made me go, aha, there's something that I want to get at. And this image is like helping keep it alive in me, you know? I don't know if I even know, but I love it. Look at this. Red cookware, so beautiful. Although the main thing about this image, and I might be wrong about this because I can't tell if this is being taken in the kitchen or not, but it seems like the kitchen might be the next room over and that this is like a room adjacent to the kitchen, and this cookware and these jars of preserves are being stored kind of as pieces of art, but also they're there waiting to be used. And I have actually already been inspired by this directly, whether this is the kitchen or not. To me, the idea of having this cookware stored like on a wall near the kitchen rather than necessarily clearly in the kitchen or in a part of the kitchen that's clearly kitchen-y. I've already taken that inspiration and acted on it because the kitchen in this house is really, really small. There isn't very much storage space particularly. And I have a little collection of cast iron Dutch ovens, 3 of them, I think, that are really beautiful. And I love to see them. And there's just nowhere for them to go in the kitchen. There's not even anywhere to put them out of sight. And there's definitely not anywhere to put them where they would be kind of on display. So I put them on some shelves in the dining room. I love it. It's almost the only thing that's on display in the dining room. And it really makes sense. Like it works. It makes logical sense. You don't walk in and go like, what's that kitchen stuff doing in here, you know? And I never would have thought to do that if it hadn't been for this image. Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, this is the image of a guest bedroom of George Nakashima's house, which is apparently in New Hope, Pennsylvania. I love this because it says that it's a guest bedroom, but it looks very, very lived in. I think that in a lot of cases, the guest bedroom is like this sterile place where maybe the bedding has like been purchased brand new as guest bedding and it's almost never been used. Whereas the bedding here, these cushions, these pillows, they look loved. They look old. The desk looks used. I mean, I think it's a guest room, but someone's maybe using it for something. But that gives it like a coziness and accessibility. I would love to be a guest at this house and be put in this room, right? It's like you're really welcomed into the home. I also like the fact that the bed looks kind of stuffed into the corner. It almost looks like a window seat of a kind, you know? It's so different than what I imagine, what springs to my mind when you say guest bedroom. And yet, if I'm ever to have a guest bedroom, we don't have room for one here, but if I were ever to have one, I would love so much for it to have this kind of vibe as opposed to the vibe that does spring to mind when I say to myself, guest bedroom. Okay, this is an interesting image. The caption says, Donald Judd Library, 3rd floor, Spring Street, New York. So I guess it's the library of Donald Judd, which is really funny because there's no books on the shelves. Again, we have empty shelves showing up. I'm not out over here being like, I need to have a house full of empty shelves. And I do think it's a little bit much in this case, the shelves at least. To me, I think that what stands out from this image is the slight awkwardness of the placement of the tables and chairs. They're just kind of there, and yet it kind of works. And I feel like when I'm trying to arrange space, one of the things that I'm always doing is like fussing with exactly where the things are, like the little table here, like everything has to fit in perfectly. And I think that might partly come from living in such cramped space, small space, and needing everything to fit in elegantly so that I don't feel like it's just a big pile of stuff, which is fine. I mean, that makes total sense. And because of that, I find it very striking to see this corner with very little in it and very little on the shelves. And then these tables and chairs just kind of there. The lack of fussiness over exactly how everything is placed and angled, it sort of lets something loose. It liberates something inside of me that has grown used to just like clamping down and trying to perfectly arrange everything. This is an image that I really like because and I mean, of course, this house is clearly very beautiful architecturally, and the house that we're living in is not like this in any way. When you have a house that is this architecturally beautiful, it helps everything else look really beautiful. But there's something about the sort of semi-industrial nature of this bench table thing and the kind of industrial nature of the chair, that folding chair, and the very casual, classic wicker chairs that are there. Again, there's like an effortlessness to it, right? None of it looks particularly expensive, although it could be. It could be that these are pieces of like classic design, furniture design that are actually wildly expensive. I just don't know because I'm not that deep in. But none of it looks wildly expensive. It doesn't look, again, designed within an inch of its life. And so there is that quality, that casual, the quality of ease. And even though it's slightly incongruous, like I feel like these wicker chairs maybe belong on a porch somewhere. And also it's kind of funny that like one's in one corner and the other's in the other corner. None of it goes together. And I could see myself trying to put pieces of furniture that I'd kind of collected in different phases of my life and that don't go together, trying to make them work in a space and being like, ugh, they just don't go together and it doesn't seem intentional. With these exact pieces, I could see myself feeling that way. But the fact that the space is so spare, there's no art on the walls, at least not in these images. There's very little on the desk. desk. There isn't any shelving shoved under the desk or next to the desk with a whole bunch of books on it. Like there isn't stuff being stored in this area. It has that sort of empty shelves quality. The fact that it's like that, to me, makes all of the furniture work together. It feels really inviting, and it even has a coziness that comes from the minimalism of it. And that's why I saved this picture, because it is a kind of minimalism that isn't the brand new, like just bought it at Home Goods, rigid, almost sanitized minimalism of the gram, you know? And I wanted to hold on to that. This is another one. I mean, clearly what defines this space is that huge window and all of the plants outside. And, you know, you can't have that unless you have that. But the chaos of the table, the low table, the cushions on the floor, and then the chaos of the stuff piled on the table, books piled on the table, and then in the corner of the table that's next to the window, like pieces of ceramics and plants and lamps kind of pushed together and grouped together in a way that isn't designed or isn't really organized. It's working in the space because there's a lot of empty floor. Again, not a lot of like garbage, you know? Even though there's a lot to look at here, there actually isn't a lot of stuff filling the room. And so these little areas of chaos feel good to me. Okay, but this is an image that I saved. Looks like it might even be the same house. This is an image that I saved kind of for the opposite reason, right? There's furniture just placed, like there's this table just placed next to the little blue table, just there on the rug next to the chair, next to the bed. It doesn't have a place that it goes. It's just like there in the middle of the carpet, kind of. And there's this chair just on the rug, maybe because someone was sitting in it, talking to someone who was sitting on the bed. In terms of where the furniture is placed, this feels very disorganized to me. I wouldn't do this. I'd be like, this table needs to go away somewhere so that the space can be clear, so that it can be empty. And yet it feels lovely, right? It feels lived in, it feels comfortable. And I think that in this case, it might be because there isn't a lot of stuff all over. Like the chest doesn't have stuff on it. The bed is made, even though it's made in this very casual way. There's stuff on the table, but there's not stuff on the floor. Again, this image is kind of like giving me permission to have just a chair kind of in the middle of the carpet because that's just where it is right now. I think it also helps that much of the furniture, especially the chairs and the tables in this image, are sort of spare. They look lightweight enough to move around. And so it doesn't feel like they're sitting there forever, taking up space in the wrong place. It just feels like they're pieces that get moved around as needed. Okay, this is very beautiful for a number of reasons. Like there's a lot of inspiration you can take from this. The red velvet sort of just thrown over the furniture with a red velvet cushion on top of it. I could totally see myself imitating that at some point. Like having a piece of furniture that I would like to have reupholstered, but it's very expensive to reupholster furniture, and getting an awkward slip cover that you like buy from Amazon or IKEA never really ends up looking good, you know? But getting enough fabric, especially if I can find it like on sale at a fabric shop. You know what I mean? Like going through the discount bins at a fabric shop, getting enough to drape all the way over the piece, and then sewing some cushion covers from the same fabric to put on the piece so that it really does look intentional, really looks designed. I actually have my reading chair is really comfortable. It's upholstered in this terrible fabric, and I've always wanted to get it reupholstered, but it's going to cost so much if I ever decide to do that. I could totally see myself doing this with it for the time being. That might be something I do. But I think the main reason that I saved this image is because look at the wall in the bottom left-hand corner of the image. It's in such bad shape, right? The plaster's been scraped away. The paint on the baseboard is peeling, doesn't match the wall, doesn't match the floor. It just looks unfinished, looks old, looks a little bit like it's falling apart, and it's okay. It looks beautiful, right? The whole thing looks incredibly beautiful. It doesn't have to be new. It doesn't have to be finished. And there are spaces in a lot of houses, and there are spaces in this house that are like that. This image is making me see that kind of thing, like peeling paint, unfinished corner, in a new light because it works so well as part of the image. Ooh, look at this. Look at this image. These two old chairs that are busted. I've always loved old things, beautiful old things, you know? It's not new to me, the idea of cherishing something because it has that quality of age. But the older I've gotten, the further I've gotten away from being okay with something being really quite busted, like super torn up, sagging like this, you know? And this image it really like helps rewrite that desire for things to always be brand new and in perfect condition and extremely functional, right? Because the beauty of it is that you can see the seats worn into the shape of butts, right? It's like so many people have sat in these chairs, and yet they've retained or even developed more of this quality of charm and opulence, actually. I feel even like the fact that they're worn down the way they are is a quality of opulence in this case. And it's so much better than it would be if they were super brand shiny new and felt super brand shiny new. And it's also inviting. It's comfortable when you come into a home that has furniture that's clearly been used in this way. That's very inviting because you don't feel like you're going to mess everything up. And I would like my house to have that quality. Okay, there's a lot that's interesting that's going on in this image. Pictures in picture frames awkwardly placed. Like there are some pictures stacked on a chair. There's a picture leaning against the wall, and the pictures are hung in kind of awkward places. And then there are some more pictures stacked on shelves, and I think that they all look great the way that they are. The relationship between the two bookshelves is a little bit awkward, like the way that they're placed. But because they're so full of books and again covered with pictures and stuff, it totally works. And again, this is helping me to unlearn my anxiety about everything being in the perfect place and everything being in perfect relation to each other and all spatially and the golden mean and all this stuff. It's like, no, the lived-in quality, the laid-in quality of the bookshelves makes them look and feel so correct. I think that the fact that there's nothing else in the room that you can see, like nothing else on the floor against the walls, helps with that too. Like one of the two walls that we can see doesn't have anything against it, and then this one wall has both the bookshelves against it. So again, there's this balance between kind of like a casual maximalism and clean spaciousness and emptiness, a kind of minimalism. And then there are these weird things on the table, but the table isn't covered in too much stuff either, right? The table isn't piled in books or piled in things. And it just all sings together without being over furnished, over designed, without being labored. It's also dirty. The baseboards are dirty. The walls are dirty. And I love seeing a place look really, really cozy and comfortable like this, and also very beautiful in a special way and a bit dirty. More images of places where the walls are, like where the houses are really old, right? So like this image of a funky bathtub where the walls just, you can see like the cracks in the plaster in the corners. It's clearly just an old house, like an old room, and choices have been made to add design elements, but an effort has not been made to make it look absolutely pristine and brand new, Or I love this image of a sink somewhere, maybe part of a kitchen where there are these exposed pipes and you can kind of see the dirt underneath them. It looks like it could be like an old farmhouse or something, and yet it's so beautiful. It's like, again, helping to unlearn or to combat or to make space inside of or next to all of this messaging from media and from Pinterest, about everything being really new, sparkling clean, perfectly renovated, sealed over. This lie that stuff has to be brand new to be nice, or has to be really clean and perfect to be nice. That lie that kind of makes you want to keep spending money on stuff and makes you want to keep buying brand new manufactured stuff, even when there's already so much beautiful old stuff in the world. Here's another one, again, that I love because it's just awkward, right? There's this big puffy rug in the middle of the living room. I mean, all of this furniture is clearly has a point of view, but I'm kind of responding equally to just the way that it's arranged. There's this big puffy rug that's too small for the room, according to like modern day rules about rugs. The coffee table is off to the side of the rug. It looks like the rug is there for hanging out on, just like lying on the rug, and the coffee table would work for that. Then there's this long table against the wall, nothing on the wall really, like no art on the wall. It breaks a lot of rules. It's unexpected, also dirty, and it just looks so special to me. Like so comfortable and aesthetic, but again, not in a way that is alienating. There's a cheekiness to it, and it looks very lived in, you know? I really love this one. I mean, we do have a very awkward shaped living room here, and it remains to be seen how we're going to deal with that because the living room is kind of the last bastion. But I might need to do some more meditating on this image in particular when it comes to that question. This is another one. Awkward, weird furniture, things in random places, painting on the ceiling. I mean, clearly this is like an artist, an art collector. I think that there's an actual Calder in this image, but it's that balance between there being stuff and there being not stuff. Awkwardness, like the painting that's hanging in a diamond shape on the wall. I feel like the points of the diamond are too close to the ceiling and the couch, and it's also not centered on the wall. It has a sort of awkwardness of like a teenager's room. You know what I mean? Like posters on the wall, that kind of thing, but elevated, grown up. And because of that, like posters on the wall, teenager room feeling, it feels really cozy and inviting. But because it's elevated, it feels very adult. It's almost like teenager's room vibes, but austere. I also quite like the dominating shag rug in this image. Art everywhere too is like a big takeaway from this. I like that there are a number of sculptures in that room. Okay, look at this. Look at this image. What is going on in this? I just had to save it, and I think about it all the time. I don't know who Adolf Loos and Lena Loos were. Let me see. Okay, so I think Adolf Loos was an architect. Yes, he was an architect. And this is the room that he designed, I guess, like their bedroom that he designed for himself and his wife. And this was in 1903. 1903. This picture was taken. Can you imagine it being 1903 and somebody, an architect, being like, this is the bedroom I'm going to design? There's fur all over the floor, and the bed has a fur bed skirt. There's nothing else in there. There's nothing on the bedside tables. I can only assume that clothing and other things, other bedroom things, are stored behind the curtains. And here we have, again, the return of the fabric that covers up stuff, you know, and makes it feel more minimalist. I feel like this is the definition of the crossroads between minimalism and maximalism, because there's nothing more maximalist than this fur-covered floor / bed / everything. And even the fabric hanging down from the pipes on the walls with this sort of bed skirt ruffle at the bottom. I mean, it's not like I'm about to cover our floor in fur, but I have never stopped thinking about this image since I've seen it. What is it telling us? I think it's telling us something about the power of putting your stuff away. Because if the stuff was out, you know what I mean? If there was like books on the bedside table, water glasses, shoes on the floor, you know what I mean? If some of the signs of life were strewn about, the image wouldn't have nearly the impact that it does. There's also just something here about out of the box thinking. This is something that on paper would not fly. You know what I mean? If someone described it to me, I would be like, no, we're not doing that. Nobody's doing that. That's not a good idea. And yet it looks marvelous. It just works. It's like an art installation, but somehow viable, somehow livable. Here is a much toned down version of I don't know, some similar ideas, right? Actually, a lot of the things that we've talked about so far are at play here. I think that this is a piece of furniture that's been completely covered in a giant piece of red faux fur. The caption says that this picture was taken in a village home in Greece in 1988. And we have the comfort with the imperfection of the plaster, the comfort with a bit of griminess, right? With a kind of space that's so old that you can never really get it clean. We have a piece of furniture that's been just covered up with fabric to make it look good. We have this wild texture of the red faux fur. I mean, like, why did they choose that? I don't know, but I'm really here for it. And we also have the minimalism, maximalism thing, right? I mean, it was a maximalist choice. Red faux fur was a maximalist choice. But there's nothing else in the image. If this were my space, it would be really hard for me to keep from filling those deep window ledges with stuff, vases, books. But part of why the impact is so luscious of this piece of furniture is that the rest of it is relatively spare. The stuff is put away. So maybe between this and Lena Lou's bedroom, it's like when you've covered everything in faux fur, you have to put your stuff away. That's the takeaway. That's the rule. Okay, this is the last one. I mean, this is just so beautiful. And again, many of the same principles at play. The chipped plaster, the imperfect walls, these paintings which are unframed, right? Unpolished, unframed, and hung in a very awkward way, right? They're not at the same height as each other, which is something that I'm always really meticulous about in my own space. And yet it works because of that casual feeling, that unfinished artsy feeling. It's almost like these paintings are just hanging here for now. And actually, I think that might be a good stopping place because, and let me come back to the middle. I'm going to try to get myself together now to have some takeaways from this. What I was going to say about this is that quality of it being unfinished, this is just where we've put this for now, or this is just where we're hanging this for now, rather than it being everything has been carefully thought through and purchased at great expense and installed into its perfect place so that everything is perfectly balanced and perfectly designed. And then this is how it is. Instead of that, this feeling of what if we hang this here for now? Or what if we put this here for now? Or what if we put this chair right here for now because we need to sit in it right now? That feeling of lightness and movability, breathability, that is it's really healthy, I think, for me right now to see that in images that feel so confident in their beauty and in the way that they've depicted spaces. Because our space has to be like that right now, right? We don't have enough money to furnish it within an inch of its life and to buy all of the most perfect and beautiful things. One thing that's happened to me a number of times is that I've gotten sort of sucked down this way of thinking about our space where I'm like, oh my gosh, this space isn't going to feel nice unless we buy this. And then if we get that, we need to buy this. And if we get that, we need this. And then we need this. And all of a sudden there's this laundry list of expensive furniture items that we need for the house to feel good. When I start getting in that headspace, I come back to this saved group of images and I look through them. And by the time I'm at the end of them, I'm like, we don't need any of that stuff. Or maybe we just need one of those things, but we don't, it doesn't need to look like Architectural Digest inside of our house. And it doesn't need to look like we're wealthier than we are. We can make it look like a couple of artists live here who are slowly and painstakingly collecting some nice pieces of furniture, but who haven't been able to buy it all at once. And for the time being, who have some empty corners, empty shelves, broken things, rugs that are too small for the room. Because that is what we are, that is what we have. And it's like a kind of armor to have a collection of images that celebrates that. I think that the thing that I've really learned from these images, though, that what I just talked about is a reminder. They've given me a reminder of something that I already am or that I already knew. I think that the thing that I've learned from them that I maybe couldn't have come up with on my own is the thing about emptiness, spare furnishing in a space, and how powerful that can be, and how you can get that feeling of calm that we get when we look at clean, minimalist spaces that are super contemporary. You can get that feeling even with things that are old, that are more complex or broken or peeling or dirty. Those aren't qualities that we usually associate with contemporary minimalism, but you can get that feeling as long as you don't shove too much stuff into one room or into one corner. Whether we're succeeding in this, whether I am managing to stick to this, sort of remains to be seen. I mean, I'm not over here obsessively trying to make the spaces in our house look just like these images. But I think that the dining room, if I can, I'll insert an image. It's one of the rooms that I kind of feel like it's done. There's not that much in it, there's a lot of empty space. The aforementioned shelving with our Dutch ovens on them is in there. We have this one little table that's very awkward. It's not really a dining room table. It's just a little table that my sister wasn't using. We don't have a dining room table, and buying one is definitely not top of our list right now for household items. The chairs, too, are just ones that we've borrowed from my sister that she was getting rid of. But I got this beautiful, rich, rust orange waffle tablecloth and napkins that adds so much texture to the space. It's sort of a simple thing, but also really makes everything feel intentional, I feel. And I think that the way that it ended up looking and the fact that I'm very at peace with the sort of emptiness of that space is directly thanks to the imagery that I've been collecting. I'm going to leave it there. If you watched this to the end, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you for sticking it out and for hanging out with me. This is like very much like the weird interior of Hannah's mind moment over here. If you happen to not be subscribed and you did manage to watch all the way to the end of this video, I feel like it's a sign that you probably should subscribe. But no matter what you do, don't forget to take extra good care of yourself so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.